is the second last. So आपने इंडेस का ज्ञान काफी हासिल किया होगा. अच्छा दोस्तों, एक बात है, ये वेबिनार में एक चीज बहुत मिस करता हूं मैं, एंड वो है पर्सनल कॉन्टेक्स्ट. जो रूबरू बात होती है उसमें जो मजा है वो यहाँ पे नहीं है, बट उसको मेकअप करने के लिए, टू मेकअप दैट, आई सजेस्ट देयर इज वन मीडिया, देयर इज वन जरिया, एंड वो है चैट. चैट के माध्यम से मुझे प्लीज ये प्रतीति कराइए कि मैं कोई न्यूज रीडर के जैसा नहीं बोल रहा हूँ, मेरे सामने ऑडियंस है जो पर्दे के पीछे है ना सर. So please interact with me, and if you have any problems, whether the slide is not moving, whether I'm audible or not, whether I'm visible or not, please do share your feelings, your feedback without any zigzag. Okay sir, समय बहुत कम है, कहने को बहुत कुछ है, मगर कैसे कहूँ ये मेरी दुविधा है, but still let me try my best. The slides which I made is for at least 4 to 4 hours session, 67 slide, and very important chapter, the first time adoption of Indian accounting standards.
Excuse me sir, sir थोड़ा सा वॉल्यूम बढ़ा सकते हैं sir?
Yeah, I can increase my volume certainly. All right, how about now?
Yeah,
Can you?
It's fine, completely fine now sir. Thank you.
Completely fine. Yeah. ऐसी शिकायतें जो भी कुछ है सुझाव देते रहिए, ताकि I can always improvise myself. All right sir, thank you so much. Okay, now I'm sure it is presumed that by now you're all apprised with the IND AS, and we all know that this IND AS is the principle-based standard. But ironically, हैरानी की बात ये है कि this very standard, which is IND AS 101, which is a parallel to IFRS 1, is itself a rule-based standard. Very ironical. जो standards IFRS या IND AS principle-based है, उसे starting करने की भूमिका जो standard निभा रहा है, वो itself is a rule-based. Why? Because it says you're supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that. But anyway, that's a part. So these standards basically, so इससे पहले छोटी सी पूर्व भूमिका बता दूं. I set the tone of this standard, and then I think things will be very easy for you. I'll give you some conceptual understanding about this standard, and which is this. For example, you are till now following the cash basis, and now you want to move to the accrual basis. So you need to make some changes, correct? इसकी शुरुआत कहीं ना कहीं होती है, correct? When you make this start, you make this beginning on the beginning of the on the first year of the accounting year, on the first day of the accounting year. That means, suppose if I have decided that I want to move from cash to accrual system, I will make changes on, say, for the financial year 1920. So I'll make changes on 1st April 2019. So then I will make one balance sheet. This is known as the opening balance sheet, and that balance sheet will be pursuant to conducive or as per the accrual system. हर standards में, हर gap में, gap means generally accepted accounting principles. In all the gap, there are 4 cardinal principles: A, recognition; B, measurement; C, presentation; and D, disclosure. उसमें definitely अंतर है कहीं ना कहीं recognition criteria में. For example, in the IFRS, for the subsequent measurement, the valuation method is permissible. Revaluation model is permissible for property, plant, equipment, and intangible assets as well. But as far as US GAAP is concerned, the subsequent revaluation model is not permissible. So like this, there are changes. One more example of the changes in the GAAP. And now I'll be giving the example with reference to IND AS. For example, under the erstwhile standard, जैसे हम कहेंगे कि AS, because I won't call them IND AS, because even in I won't call them the Indian GAAP, because Indian GAAP today are comprised of 2 standards: A, AS, and B, IND AS. So the erstwhile AS, or even AS now, the preference shares, more so the redeemable preference shares, were considered as a part of an equity. That was the recognition criteria. But under IND AS, redeemable preferences are not considered as an equity, but they are considered as a debt. So like this, there are changes. So when you move from one gap to another gap, when you move from the erstwhile AS, non-IND AS standards to IND AS standard, you have to take care of the 4 aspects. A, recognition, B, measurement, C, presentation and D, disclosure. उसमें जो भी अंतर है उसे आपको you have to come on the platform of IND AS and you have to make your balance sheet as per the IND AS, and that's known technically as opening IND AS statement of financial position. In other words, opening IND AS balance sheet. अब ये balance sheet कब बनानी है? मैंने कहा कि at the beginning of the year, but not really, because IND AS 1 requires you to present financial accounting for at least 2 financial years, current year and one preceding. So now in this case, suppose if I'm moving to, if I've decided to move to IND AS from the erstwhile AS for the financial year 1920, I'll have to make my opening IND AS balance sheet on 1st of April 2018 and not 1st April 2019. The reason being, I have to give the comparison. I have to present my immediate preceding comparable financial statements as per IND AS. जी हाँ दोस्तों, तो मुझे बनाना है बैलेंस शीट 1 अप्रैल 2018 को, and this balance sheet is as to be as per the accounting policies of the IND AS, and it may be a bit early, but let me tell you now, मैं बना रहा हूँ बैलेंस शीट IND AS की on 1st April 2018. 1819 is my comparison for the 1920. वास्तव में मैं हकीकत में मैं IND AS अख्तियार कर रहा हूँ financial year 1920 में, and for that year I will be known as the first time adopter. जी हाँ, can you see on your screen? An entity is referred to as a first time adopters in the period in which present first IND AS financial statements. Financial year 1920, I am the first time adopter. The reason being, I am presenting my first IND AS financial statements. Well, that does not mean that 1819 are not as per the finances, as per the IND AS. They are indeed as per the IND AS also, but technically, I am known as the FTA for financial year 1920 and not financial year 1819. हालांकि मैं शुरुआत कर चुका हूँ 1 अप्रैल 2018 को. उस दिन मैं एक चीज बनाऊंगा and okay, पहले उस दिन की मुझे definition देने दो. Technically, 1st April 2018 in our case today is known as the date of transition. उस दिन मैं पदार्पण करता हूँ, उस दिन मैं शुरुआत करता हूँ. I do Sri Ganeshaya Namaha of IND AS on the date of transition, which in our case is 1st April 2018. उस दिन मैं एक चीज बनाऊंगा and वो चीज का नाम है first IND AS finance, opening IND AS balance sheet. जी हाँ. So when I make this balance sheet, I have to make sure that what is required to be recognized, what is required to be de-recognized, what is required to be remeasured as per the IND AS. Simple से मिसाल दूं, IND AS 109 financial instrument, which is parallel to IFRS 9. It says that initially all the financial instruments have to be measured at fair value. जी हाँ दोस्तों, ये concept नहीं था in erstwhile AS में. So when I move from the erstwhile AS to IND AS, पहला मेरा कर्तव्य है कि if there are any financial instruments and if there are no exceptions oblique exemption for a particular accounting treatment of the particular instrument, then I have to fair value that investment. I know you will ask me a question, sir. एक मिसाल दे दीजिए. जी हाँ बहनों भाइयों, आपके लिए मिसाल है, example है financial instruments other than investments in subsidiary, joint venture, associates and associates. Investments in subsidiary, investments other than investment in subsidiary, joint venture and associates. IND AS require them to be measured at fair value. So the investment which I mentioned, other than investment in subsidiaries, associates and JVs, were carrying on at a carrying value at cost in the erstwhile AS balance sheet. It's say for example 1 lakh. And the market value, the fair value of this listed equipment investment on 1st April 2018, what date 1st April 2018 को दोस्तों आप कौन सी डेट कहेंगे? Hello, I want a response from you guys just now. I want to respect. Please be very proactive. No, 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 it's not FTA. It's not FTA. Absolutely correct. Someone answered correctly. Date of transition. That means transition date. बिल्कुल सही जवाब. आपके उत्तर से मोगैम्बो खुश हुआ. जी हाँ दोस्तों. That date is date of transition. On that day, as I told you, the carrying value as per the cost, as per the erstwhile age was 1 lakh rupiah, 1 lakh rupees. Now the IND AS 109 says, अब मुझे बात करनी है इंडेज की भाषा में. जी हाँ, I have to talk in terms of इंडेज, so I have to learn अख्तियार करना है and implement इंडेज. IND AS 109 says that initial measurement, except the voluntary, except some exception and exemption, on the date of transition had to be fair valued. So now what do I do? Investment which is the carrying value of 1 lakh rupees is now, for example, has a market value of 18 lakhs rupees, will be measured at 18 lakhs rupees. I know, sir, your immediate reaction will be, sir, give me a journal entries, because ये accountant का दिल है and हम journal entry के सिवाय और कुछ भाषा में बातें नहीं करना चाहते. ये रही आपके लिए entry. Carrying value of the investment as per the erstwhile is 1 lakh. You have increased to 18 lakhs by 17 lakhs. My accounting entry, क्योंकि ये बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है सर कि जो भी मैं तब्दीलियां कर रहा हूं, whatever changes I'm making in the amount recognized as per the erstwhile is, while moving to IND AS, उसकी impact कहाँ दूं मैं? कहीं ना कहीं तो impact जाएगी ना सर. हम जानते हैं कि हमारी लाइफ में दो ही चीज है, एक है डेबिट, एक है क्रेडिट. Yes or no? Hello? Yes or no? हेलो. यस और नो. हाँ, अच्छा अच्छा. होस्ट साहब, जो जो मेरे होस्ट है या को होस्ट है, वो इज देयर. प्लीज मैं आपसे विनती करूंगा, गुजारिश करूंगा कि किसी एक भी लड़के या लड़की या आप भी अगर हाँ में हाँ मिलाए तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगेगा. यू नो, मुझे आपकी सुर की सुनने की आवश्यकता वो है. I'm looking to hear from you, or so you can unmute any of the participants, or even unmute yourself and मेरे हाँ में हाँ कहिए या तो हाँ में ना कहिए, या तो सहमत हुई या तो नहीं हुई. ओके सर, फाइन. सो दैट्स ग्रेट. सो हमारी जिंदगी में केवल वो की दो ही बात है, एक है डेबिट, दूसरी है क्रेडिट. तो यहाँ आपके लिए डेबिट है. डेबिट, इन्वेस्टमेंट इन इक्विटी शेयर्स 17 lakhs rupees, and credit, can anyone give me the answer please? मैं डेबिट तो बोल दिया, आधा काम मैंने किया, अब आधा काम आप कीजिए. So when I make these changes on the date of transition on the first day, what entry should be? Mind you, dear fair, this is not a payment. This is not an investment. This is not an investment. This is the changes I'm making. Hey, someone give me correct answer, and that is Surinder Goyal. Surinder Goyal, आपका उत्तर बिल्कुल सही है. कंप्यूटर जी, सुरिंदर गोयल को लिए होस्ट साहब, सुरिंदर गोयल साहब की आवाज बुलंद कीजिए. Unmute him. Surinder, I implore you to come on this hot seat पे आइए. Surinder Goyal, please unmute yourself and say good morning to me. Hello. Hi Surinder. नहीं आना चाहते क्या? Surinder Gujral. Okay, fine. Okay जी, the entry is debit, investment in equity 17 lakhs, and credit the retained earning. So when you make changes in the recognition and the measurement, what you've done, the recognition was there, but now you're making changes in the present, in the measurement. And later on, you need to make changes in the presentation. जी हाँ दोस्तों, as far as we Indians are concerned, we need to be very sure about one thing when it comes to the presentation and disclosure. And that is, you should be careful about division 2, schedule 3 of the Companies Act. क्योंकि IND AS नहीं, मगर Companies Act lays down the format of the balance sheet and statement of profit loss account. So if you want to be really master of IND AS, then you must Atmasat Division 2, Schedule 3 to the Companies Act, and that gives you the format of the balance sheet and the income statement. And not only that, it gives you the guidance as to how to account for a particular thing. I will tell you something very interesting, very interesting. So, Mr. Host, sir, can you can you unmute yourself, because I want you to, मुझे कुछ दायित्व देना है आपको. Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Saab? Nobody is there.
Yes, sir. Can I help you?
Yeah, may I know who is on the other line?
Sir, this is Charu Sareen. This side.
जी मैं एक आपको दायित्व देना चाहता हूँ, मुझे आप रिमाइंड कीजिए, बहुत ही एक रोचक घटना है, रोचक इंसिडेंट है, एनेक्डोट है, which is very good academic interest for the participants to know, and they must know this if they want to be part of the if they want to implement in this very successfully. So please चारू जी मुझे रिमाइंड कीजिए, मैं भी यहाँ पे मेरी नोट में लिख रहा हूँ, that is one paragraph of in this about division 2. So आप मुझे रिमाइंड कीजिए exactly at 11:45. Okay चारू जी?
जी सर, बिल्कुल.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका, बहुत बहुत
Thank
शुक्रिया.
you, sir.
Okay. Thanks to you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So on the date of transition आप एक अहम काम करेंगे, and वो काम है making your opening balance sheet as per IND AS, as per the accounting principles laid down in all IND AS. जी हाँ. Very important thing, sir. You are known as the FTA for the period in which you present your first IND AS financial statements. And in this, you have to make one thing very sure, and don't forget that, and that is you have to make an explicit and unreserved statement of compliance with all IND AS. You have to mention that in the notes to accounts that you have complied with all IND AS, and then only it will be complete task. So um, you have to apply accounting policies as per the IND AS, that's fine. But friends, there are certain exemptions and certain exceptions which we'll discuss now. But now let us see what is the first IND AS financial statements, because the first time adopter is the one, an entity is referred to as the first time adopter in the period in which it presents the first IND AS financial statements. Now let's see what is first IND AS financial statements. The first annual financial statements in which an entity adopts IND AS by making an explicit and unreserved statement of compliance. So in our case, Mitro, 1920 will be the first IND AS financial statements. जी हाँ दोस्तों, इसका जिक्र मैं बहुत कर रहा हूँ बार बार, क्योंकि एक बहुत ही अच्छी बात आपसे शेयर करनी है मुझे. So remember, what is the definition of first IND AS financial statements? It's the first annual. That means 1920 financial year में अगर मैं IND AS करता हूँ, तो जाहिर सी बात है मुझे फर्स्ट क्वार्टर से ही अप्लाई करना पड़ेगा. Yes or no? But that first quarter financial statement is not construed as first IND AS financial statements. Why? Because they are not annual, they are quarterly. So it's the annual financial statements only that is it. And very important, what do you mean by explicit and unreserved? It means that compliance with all the IND AS and the partial compliance is not possible. You have to comply with all applicable accounting standards or IND AS. Okay. अब इससे जुड़ी हुई इस डेफिनेशन से बिल्कुल क्लोज टू क्लोज जुड़ी हुई है एक और डेफिनेशन. जी हाँ दोस्तों, एंड दैट्स द फर्स्ट IND AS रिपोर्टिंग पीरियड, द लेटेस्ट पीरियड. Now let us see the latest periods covered by an entity's first IND AS financial statements. Entity's first IND AS financial statements in our case is 1920. So first IND AS reporting 20 is 1920. इसका राज क्या है बताऊंगा आपको ब्रेक के बाद. बहुत ही रोचक बात है, and important as well. Apart from being interesting, very important conceptually. So remember what is the first IND AS financial statements and first IND AS reporting period. All right. चलिए सर, एक बहुत अच्छी बात है that IND AS are very different as compared to the existing AS, and some standards are totally new. मिसाल के तौर पे IND AS 103 business combination. Now this standard is totally different from the erstwhile standard on amalgamation and combination, and that is AS14. AS14 की तुलना में IND AS 103. So kindly do share the example of the challenges faced by the complete. Is there a closing balance? Okay. देखो मैं मित्र माई, I am going to share some examples also. Don't worry. And for that, एक गुजारिश करूंगा मैं मैनेजमेंट से कि allow me to extend this session by at least 30 minutes. I am going to share more anything. बस पहले मुझे टोन सेटअप करना है, पहले मुझे आपको तैयार करना है theoretically. Then I'll prepare you practically. I have done nothing less than 250, nothing less than 250 conversions of companies. So I'll share practical knowledge with you, practical anecdotes with you. धीरज रखिए, संयम रखिए, सब आपको दूंगा. Okay, bear with me. And this PPTs also will be shared with you. So now the point is, IND AS काफी जटिल है as compared to ES. मिसाल के तौर पे IND AS 103. IND AS 103 business combination is allowing only the purchase oblique acquisition method, and it does not allow the pooling of interest method. And this different method is much different and complicated as compared to ES 14. So take example that you have acquired a subsidiary back in 2015, and now when you apply IND AS 101, you are adopting IND AS 101. If you go back to 2015, and if you have to do the accounting as per the IND AS, तो काफी जटिल हो जाएगा. It's going to be very time consuming, very costly affair, and the cost benefit ratio will be thwarted. So cost will be more than the benefit accruing to the entity. So in this case, ऐसी समस्याओं को सुलझाने के लिए what they have done, IFRS oblique IASB oblique IND AS has allowed you some exemptions and exceptions from the retrospective application of the IND AS. And for that, I'm going to tell you, two participants have raised hands. So आप क्या कहना चाहते हैं हमारे मित्रों, बताइए. What do you want to say, Gia? Hello. I believe you raised your hand, right? Hello.
So we'll try to promote them to panelists and then they can speak it out.
Okay, fine. So IND AS is allowing you some exemption and exception from the retrospective application. So when you make the opening IND AS balance sheet on the date of transition, which in our case is 1st April 2018, आपको कुछ सहूलियत दी गई है, कुछ एग्जाम्पल दी गई है, कुछ रियायत दी गई है, एग्जेम्पशन दिए गए हैं, कुछ रियायत दी गई है. For example, not to apply certain standard retrospectively. All right, I'll give one more example that when it comes to the property plant equipment AS16, the recognition and the measurement criteria were much different as compared to the IFRS. AS में जो थी कुछ चीजें वो IND AS में नहीं थी. For example, capitalization of foreign exchange differences pursuant to the option taken under paragraph 46 A of AS11. 2011 में exemption दी गया था कि in some certain limited cases foreign exchange losses can be capitalized as a part of property plant equipment pursuant to paragraph 46 and 46A of AS1. Now that is not permissible under the IND AS. तो क्या आप you go delve deep to the matter? You will delve deep into the matter since the inception? No, it's going to be very difficult. So to obviate that, इस समस्या को हल करने के लिए IND AS is allowing you certain voluntary exemption and certain voluntary exception. This just to make your task of transition to IND AS very simple. This will be followed by some practical examples. Don't worry. Now, हमें बनानी है balance sheet. Please, 46A was actually to bail. I understand. I don't deny that paragraph 46A was to bail out our companies from the vagaries of the foreign exchange fluctuations, but this was not there in the IND AS. So there is naturally a gap between that AS requirement and the requirement of IND AS. So the option is that either you go back to the date of the inception and make all the changes as if you had applied IND AS from the inception. Either you do that or the claim exemption. सही बात है, because it is very difficult. So for many companies, now take example of the Tata Group, Reliance Group, and so many other companies which had number of associates and JVs and subsidiaries. अगर वो इतने पुराने दिनों से करने को जाए तो they will say our main business is to convert the account into the IND AS and side business is to do the business. तो ये सब समस्या and जो practical difficulties है वो दूर करने के लिए there are some practical expedients, and these are nothing but the voluntary exemption and mandatory exceptions from the application of the retrospective accounting application of the IND AS. We'll do that, sir. Please, now we say that we are going to make the opening IND AS balance sheet on 1st of April 2018. अब प्रश्न है कि on what basis, which accounting policies to be applied to while preparing this opening Ind AS balance sheet. So naturally, the question arises that you have three choices. We have three choices: either the date of opening date, there's the date of initial application, 1st April 18, yeah, 31st March 2019, yeah, 31st March 2020. So देखिए this slide. Use the same accounting policies in its opening Ind AS statement of financial position and throughout the comparative, that means 18, 19, and of course in this first Ind AS financial statement. So तीन स्टेटमेंट जो तीन बैलेंस शीट आपकी बनेगी, एक है 1 अप्रैल 2018, 32nd is 31st March 2019 and 33rd is 31st March 2020. वो तीनों बैलेंस शीट में आप एक ही अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी यूज करेंगे, दैट मींस सेम अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज। अब प्रश्न है कि कौन सी डेट पे ये अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज शुड बी इफेक्टिव, डेट ऑफ ट्रांजिशन, on the date of interim comparative, or 31st March 2020. The answer is this. Now चलिए हम आप कंप्यूटर जी हम और आप पढ़ते हैं ये लाइन. Normally I don't read the lines, but today I feel like those accounting policies shall comply with each Ind AS effective at the end of first Ind AS reporting period. Now, dosto, remember, why was I saying that first Ind AS accounting reporting period is important? That is the 31st March 2020 here. So 31st March 2020 के दिन पे जो भी accounting policies are effective and operative and applicable, you will make comparatives and opening Ind AS statement of financial position based on the accounting policies prevailing on 31st March 2020. In our case, very important statement here. Application of accounting policies effective at the date of first Ind AS reporting period to opening Ind AS balance sheet and comparative is to be applied even if such policies were not operative at the standard date of transition, subject of course to mandatory exception and exemption. So if whatever policies are applicable on 31st March 2020, you have to prepare the balance sheet and the financial statements of the 1920, of course, for that, and 1819 and also 1st April 18, बावजूद उससे कि वो एप्लीकेशन वो अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स नहीं एप्लीकेबल थे. I will give you an example here. In our case today, the date of transition is 1st April 2018, 1819 is comparative, and 1920 is the first time adoption of the Ind AS. Now, Ind AS 116, that is the leases, which is parallel to IFRS 16, has become applicable on accounting periods, applicable to accounting periods beginning on or after 1st April 2019. That means they were not applicable for 18-19 financial year. That also means they were not applicable for the on 1st April 2018, which is the date of transition here. But they are applicable for financial year 1920. Since they are applicable for financial year 1920, you have to apply Ind AS 116 as if it was applicable to financial year 18-19 and as if it was applicable on 31st March 2018 oblique 1st April 2018 on the date of transition. So to be very careful that you have to make this balance sheet, opening Ind AS balance sheet, based on the accounting policies prevailing technically on the first Ind AS reporting period, with some exception to this. This is about the paragraph 13 to 19 of Ind AS 101. This concerning the estimates and Appendix B to D. Appendix B to D of Ind AS 101 lays down the voluntary exemptions and mandatory exceptions to retrospective application. So friends, are we clear now up to this? Please, I want to hear Janta's awaj. That are you clear up to here? Because it's almost 30 minutes, half an hour of our first session, half an hour of session. मुझे आपसे ये जानना जरूरी है कि how are you feeling comfortable? You find me too fast, too जल्दी और too slow और क्या है मुझे बताएं. आपकी मन की बात बताएं मुझे. चलिए मैं आपकी मन की बात सुनने को बहुत ही आतुर हूँ. Let me hear from you, sir. Okay, the pace is good. Perfect, sir. Yes, 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 sir. Thank you. All fine. You're fine with the pace. Thank you so much. Speed is perfect. We can be okay. We can be little more faster. That's great. That's great. Very interesting session. Very good, sir. Thank you so much. आपकी आवाज, आपका मंतव्य शेयर करने के लिए. Thank you so much. Now, the first thing which you have to do is when you prepare the IND AS, opening IND AS financial statements, balance sheet, that's the starting point for the IND AS. On that day, you do four things only. जी हाँ, आप केवल चार चीज करेंगे. क्या है? Recognize all assets and liabilities whose recognition is required under IND AS. That means अगर कुछ assets नहीं required है तो इसे आप करेंगे culti.com. जी हाँ, इसको आप करेंगे de-recognize. So that is the first is recognition, second is the de-recognition, third is reclassify. Yes, I know, sir. We were classifying loans and advances, but now we have to classify them as financial assets under the either non-current or current. Okay, sir. And measure all recognized liabilities and assets. Just so we know, sir, the um, um, the debt instrument had to be measured at amortized cost. The DEBT, loans, deposits, and all had to be measured at the as an amortized cost. And जी हाँ दोस्तों, एक ख्याल रहे कि debt instrument के लिए when you apply the effective interest rate method, there is absolutely no exemption nor any exception. तो दोस्तों ये आपको करना है retrospective application से. ठीक है सर. And let's go hurry up because my जनता कहती है कि even if you little faster, no issue about it. Now, here is example of the what you can recognize on the date of transition. These are the things which you may recognize on the date of transition. These are the cases you may de-recognize on the date of transition, which is not required as per the IND AS. For example, deferred assets where recovery is not possible. Then let us see what is there here. Just a minute, please. They need to reclassify certain item as per the IND AS 109. IND AS 109 ने बहुत ही तब्दील किया है in terms of the presentation and in terms of disclosure also, because pursuant to IND AS 107, you have to then also give them the disclosures as per the three categories. One is a fair value level 1, level 2, level 3. Another three categories. All investments and financial assets have to be classified. Financial assets and liabilities both have to be classified as a fair value, FETPL, FETOCI, and amortized cost. So this comes to the disclosure part of it. Then there is something called non-current asset held for sale. If there is any non-current asset held for sale, then you need to classify and present them separately. So you need to do all this whole exercise. Measure receivable to measure as per the fair value, inventory, more or less same as per the IGAP. Employee benefit obligations, deferred tax system. Now deferred tax 12, IND AS 12, as far as the deferred tax assets were concerned under the Indian GAAP, under the erstwhile IGAP, they were to be recognized only if they were the virtual certainty, the very stringent requirement for the recognition of the deferred tax assets. But they have been modified, diluted under the IND AS, and they said it's highly probable, and in a nutshell, the restrictions are not so strict as compared to the AS. So you may have to then, or maybe perhaps you can recognize deferred tax asset under the IND AS which were not recognized erstwhile under the AS. So you need to measure that also. Financial instrument, inevitably their investment property, it is to be measured at cost only, but it will be presented separately. Plant property equipment, बहुत ही रोचक examples है, बताऊंगा आपको break के बाद. Okay, now this says ये बहुत ही, अगर ये समझे तो समझो आपने पूरा IND AS आत्मसात कर लिया. बहुत ही. What about virtual certainty example? Virtual means अरे बाबा, कुछ कहते हैं कि you seem to have become very fast. कुछ कहते हैं कि slow हो जाए. अब मैं दुविधा में हूँ, मैं कहाँ जाऊँगा, समझ नहीं आता है. Anyway, so I have to balance it, which is a very difficult job. Balancing is a very difficult job. All right. Virtual means 100%, almost 100%. Almost real to that. You cannot say शायद होगा. There is no question of शायद फायद. ये 100% होगा तो ही मुझे पता है कि नहीं 100% मेरी कंपनी नेक्स्ट ईयर प्रॉफिट करने वाली ही है, एंड फॉर दैट आपके पास ठोस सबूत भी है, इट इज समथिंग टू ले बैक ऑन, then only you will get in the virtual certainty. All right, sir. Wind is limited exemption now. This is very important. This is very important. Let me see what's then the second slide, because then I can. Okay, fine. As I told you, IND AS 101 gives certain exemptions and certain exceptions. The difference between the exemption and the exceptions are, the exemptions are voluntary. That means अगर चाहें आप तो apply कीजिए, वरना मत कीजिए. Whereas exceptions are also prohibits the retrospective application of IND AS. अब ये sentence समझ लीजिए, prohibits retrospective application of IND AS. That means you are not supposed to apply IND AS retrospectively, which means you're supposed to apply IND AS prospectively. You're supposed to apply IND AS prospectively, which is a good task. You don't need to look back. मुड़ के ना देख, मुड़ के, my dear friend, सिर्फ आगे देख. That means on and from today, that is on and from the date of transition, you have to apply that particular accounting standard. कौन से हैं वो standards जहाँ पे mandatory exceptions from the retrospective application है? बताऊंगा आपको 4 slides के बाद. All right, and then are limited exemptions. It says very clearly that exemptions have to be applied very discreetly and very strictly. Don't apply analogy. जो standard में लिखा है केवल उसी को आप verbatim apply कीजिए exemptions. मिसाल के तौर पे, as far as property plant equipment is concerned, the exemption is from retrospective application of IND AS 16 when it comes to the cost of the property plant equipment. But that does not mean that you are not supposed to do the component accounting. ये केवल एक ही चीज के लिए आपको voluntary exemption दिया गया है, and that is considered the measurement. So instead of going back, delving deep into the matter and accounting retrospectively, taking a lot of pain, you have a choice that जो भी cost है as per the carrying value, as per the previous cap, इसी को आप continue कीजिए as per the deemed cost under the IND AS, and don't make any changes. So this is nothing but an exemption from the retrospective application of IND AS vis-a-vis cost of the property plant equipment. But that does not absolve you, that does not give the riayat or the exemption or the relief from accounting for the component accounting. So don't apply analogy. That's what the standard says. Don't apply the analogy. You apply the whatever is written in the standard. So you have to make the opening balance sheet on the date of transition based on the accounting principles and policies effective and applicable on the first IND AS reporting period, subject to certain exemption and exceptions. And that's the starting point. Thereafter, the comparative, which is 18-19 in our case, you will restate as per the IND AS, and naturally 19-20 you'll make a fresh as per the IND AS fully. Okay, and then in that statement, in that financial statements, you will make a statement of compliance, explicit and unreserved statement of compliance, sir. Fine, sir. So when you prepare, now you have to present following things. You have to present the following things, sir. Okay, all right. On the very first set of financial statements of the IND AS compliant company which is adopting IND AS for the first time will be comprised of three things. The three balance sheet. First is the first April 2018. The balance sheet, we call them opening balance sheet. Mind you well, you don't give statement of profit and loss, you don't give statement of cash flows, you don't give statement of changes in equity, you don't give nothing. You only give the opening IND AS balance sheet on 1st April 2018. 18-19 financial year जो एक जमाने में आपने किया था in previous gap के अनुसार, इसे आप restate करेंगे. Financial year 18-9 you restate as per the IND AS, and financial year 19-20 of course you're going to make as per the IND AS. So this everything for 19-20 and 18-19 you'll be presenting in your first IND AS financial statements. Okay, and only the opening balance sheet. And now, okay, so now when we give the opening balance sheet and all this, जो reader है of the financial statements is very keen to know following things. The reader is very keen to know the following things. वो उसकी रुचि यह रहेगी कि भाई ओके सर आपने इंडेस एडॉप्ट तो किया, अब हमें ये जानना है कि उसकी इम्पैक्ट फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स पे क्या हुई सर, कहाँ हुई, क्या हुई, what is the impact, where the impact, how much on followings. What you've done, sir, you made a first opening balance sheet on 31st March 2018. So the reader would like to know, here there is no question of operations, here there is no question of the profit, here is only the question of equity. So reader would like to know, sir, what is the impact on the equity on the date of transition as a result of a company entity adopting IND AS for the first time. So reader would like to know the effect of transition on financial position on day one, that is the date of transition to IND AS 1 अप्रैल 2018 को क्या impact हुई मेरी equity पे, किसकी वजह से, by adopting IND AS. All right. Then you are making one more balance sheet as per the IND AS, and that is as 31st March 2019. So reader would like to know the impact on equity as a result of IND AS application on financial position on two dates, A, date of transition, and B, the comparative, that is 31st March 2019. What is the impact on equity? So here is equity, here is equity. They also like to know कि सर एक जमाने में आप 1819 लिखे थे previous gap के अनुसार, and now you're restating as per the IND AS. So I would like to know what is the impact of IND AS on the financial performance for the financial year 1819 and for the on the cash flow statement for the financial year 1819. So you need to give the reconciliation. Now here is the reconciliation. बहुत बखूबी समझाया आपने. The date of transition to IND AS is 1st April. So reconciliation of equity is required. Reconciliation of profit and loss is not required because you're giving only the balance sheet, and impact on the cash flow is required. Here you have to give the impact on all the three things: A, balance sheet, B, income, and C, cash flow. So you need to prepare the reconciliation statements. अब देखिए जो transition में change हुए, बदलाव हुए, there is a change in the amount which has been recognized. Mr. They are not Telegram. Please share the time. Okay, Telegram की बात हो रही है, जी हाँ. Okay, I gave an example at much beginning that when you make changes in the amount recognized, that is due amount measurement, when the measurement basis is changed on the date of transition as a result of IND AS, are recognized mainly in retained earning, partly in other category of equity, and in some cases in the goodwill. But don't forget, when you recognize anything in the retained earnings or in the another category of equity, don't forget to give the impact of the tax. And when I say tax, I mean deferred tax. So in very rare cases, the changes are in the goodwill, only when there's adjustment of the intangible assets. And now let us see where all retrospective application is prohibited. As I told you, my dear friends, my idea is to share some more practical aspects concerning the IND AS, and which is very difficult in just a designated time of 120 minutes, 2 hours time. So what I'll do, okay, wherever I feel like that this is little very difficult to time consuming, then I'll skip that. But I don't want to skip the most important aspect of the IND AS conversion, and there's a property plan equipment, because that is continue time. All right, so yes, I'll share some practical examples and working in my experience with what care you need to take. बहुत माइक्रो लेवल पे भी एक जगह बात करूंगा अगर समय ने अनुमति दी तो और आपका साथ रहा तो. Following aspects retrospective application is prohibited. Now let us analyze this statement. In following cases, retrospective application is prohibited. That means what, sir? अगर ये retrospective application prohibition नहीं होता तो क्या करते आप? क्या करते आप? चलो मुझे जनता की आवाज सुननी है. Had this retrospective application would not have been there, what you would have done? Hello?
जी सर.
अगर ये retrospective application पे restrictions नहीं होते तो आप क्या करते?
You're getting answers in the chat box.
Yeah, I'm looking that only. I'm opening balance sheet. Yes, I'm looking that prospectively. Yes, absolutely correct. बिल्कुल सही जवाब. बिल्कुल सही जवाब. एक हमारे जो है participants, I cannot read the name very clearly, but I believe some Amit Shah or Amit Shah. Fantastic. If retrospective application is prohibited, what you're supposed to do? The only option is applied prospectively.
It is answered by CA Amit Gupta, Sapna Gupta.
जी हाँ जी हाँ जी हाँ उनको I mean let's recognize them. Amit Gupta and
then CA Amit Sheth, then CA Gaurav Mehra, Pooja Sharma, she has also answered this on.
जी हाँ इन सब का हम आदर करते हैं, हम recognition करते हैं for the correct answer. If you cannot do retrospective application, then you have to do the prospective application. And Charu ji, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सहयोग to give me an example, because I am keeping my system little away from me and the chat box is very small, so difficult to read me. But आप मुझे जो सहयोग दे रहे, thank you so much for the supportive role. Really great. So in these cases, you don't need to worry. Except एक ही बात है, government loan जिसमें very contradictory statement गया है. क्या है बताऊंगा आपको 2 मिनट के बाद. Okay. So in a nutshell, what they say that hedge accounting, एक बहुत रोचक बात बता दूं sir, as far as the previous gap, that means the erstwhile AS is concerned, regarding the financial instruments, AS 30, 31 and 32 are not applicable anymore. They have been withdrawn back in November 2016. So हमारे पास तो है ही नहीं, स्टैंडर्ड ही नहीं, तो क्या करेंगे? सो देन एक ही बात है कि द गाइडेंस नोट ऑन डेरिवेटिव्स, एप्लीकेशन ऑफ डेरिवेटिव अकाउंटिंग इज है, जिससे हम अप्लाई करेंगे फॉर द फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट. बट मान लीजिए दैट यू हैव डन सम हेज अकाउंटिंग एंड देयर इज सम carry forward hedge gain and losses. So what are you supposed to do? Remove them, all of them, and simply do the remeasurement of the hedge instrument on the date of transition and de-recognize any gains and losses, if any. ये नक्शे में ये बहुत ही डिफिकल्ट बात है समझाने के लिए, बट स्टिल and then there is something called de-recognition of the finance statements, de-recognition of the financial assets and liabilities. You may have de-recognized certain items of the financial assets and liabilities as per the erstwhile gap, previous gap, but आप कहते हैं कि अगर हम IND AS अप्लाई करते तो शायद हम ये de-recognition कर ना पाते. So what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to recognize them again? No. The financial liabilities and this thing, assets and liabilities which you did recognize at an earlier stage, you don't need to recognize today, and simply further go ahead with that. Then this is concerning the controlling interest, non-controlling interest, which is inextricably connected with the exemption of the 103. Normally we know that NCI के लिए बहुत कुछ ऐसे बयान किया गया है, requirement of the presentation is like this. NCI is presented as part of the equity, but separately from owner's equity. NCI is a part of equity. It is presented as a part of equity, but separately from the owner's equity. Now, this is normally the case when there is a business combination, and this is applicable to the consolidated financial statements. It is not, this standard is not, this is not covering the situation in the separate financial statement. Now, either going back and delving deep in the past, we don't do that. But here is something. However, if the first time adopter elects to apply IND AS 103 business combinations retrospectively to past business combinations, this restriction shall not apply. That means if you're not availing of the exemption under 103, you need to still account for the NCI retrospectively. Okay, then the classification, the measurement of the financial statement to be made on the basis of the facts and circumstances that exist at the date of transition to IND AS, and not on the basis of the conditions prevailing at the time of initial recognition. Here I'll give an example. What they say कि IND AS कहते हैं कि भाई financial instrument have to be measured at a fair value on the initial application, on the initial recognition. So when I'm applying IND AS 101 for the first time, I need to measure on my financial instrument at a fair value. अब fair value कौन सी date पे? जब मैंने लिया था तब या आज की date? So to obviate the all difficulties and to help you avoid do the rigmarole of all these calculations in the past, what the standard says, you don't go back into the history. अब कब तब क्या interest rate था, तब क्या exchange rate था for the foreign exchange for the foreign exchange liabilities and all this. Don't do all this on the date of transition. जो भी rates चल रहे हैं, exchange rate हो या interest rate, उसके अनुसार आप क्या कीजिए. And that's what they say, that you do this all measurement and classification based on the facts and circumstances on the date of transition. And this is again about the embedded derivatives. Embedded derivatives is the date. Embedded derivative is nothing but the compound financial statements also. So then you make the all these derivatives segregation of the into two parts based on the condition apply on the date of transition. यहाँ पे बहुत ही contradicting बात कर रहे हैं. अब देखिए मैं और आप आपके साथ पढ़ते हैं. कंप्यूटर जी चलिए हम ये स्लाइड पढ़ते हैं. A first-time adoption shall classify all government loans received as a financial liability or equity in accordance with IND AS 32 fine. Mandatory application of IND AS 109 and IND AS 20 prospectively to government loan existing at the date of transition and shall not recognize the corresponding benefits of the government loan at below market rate. We know that the below market rate government loan is to be recognized as a government grant. So here they say that it will be applied prospectively. But अभी देखिए last paragraph में क्या कहते हैं, कुछ अलग ही बात करते हैं, totally विपरीत बात करते हैं. What is that? It may, now the word is may, not shall, may apply the requirements in the IND AS 109 and IND AS 20 retrospectively to any government loans originated before the date of transition to IFRS, provided that the information needed to do so has been obtained at the time of initial accounting of that loan. चलिए सर, आप पेन और पेपर के साथ तैयार हो जाइए. आपके पास लिखिए. बताता हूं आपको संक्षिप्त में कैसे की जाती है ये एंट्री. You have received a loan from government at a rate which is much below the market rate. So technically this is known as the a loan at a below market rate of interest. Market rate है 10%, आपको लोन दी है 4% में, करेक्ट. तो इसे कही जाती है गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट. अब कैसे मेजर करते हैं? You do the present value at the rate of 4%, and then you find out what is the rate of sorry, you do the calculation as with 10% because आपको 4% पे लोन मिली है. आप 10% के रेट से इसे आप मल्टीप्लाई कीजिए एंड देन यू फाइंड द थिंग. आप बोलेंगे सर क्यों ना हो जाए एक एग्जांपल. चलिए कंप्यूटर जी एक एग्जांपल करते हैं हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स के लिए. इट्स live example for you. Live example for you. Okay. I have got a loan of 10 lakhs rupees from the government of India. Just a minute, sir. I'll make it because this is where we are comfortable. Okay. 10 lakh की लोन मुझे मिली है and the rate of interest is 4%. The rate of interest is 4%, but the market rate of interest is 10%. Okay, and iski avdi hai, iski the period is about 10 years time. The term is 10 years. Okay, so what I do, sir, I do very simple thing. I do the present value. The present value is done like this: 1/1 plus percentage raised to the power of 10. So this is okay. So this is my present value. This is my present value of 10 lakhs rupees. Okay, now this is my present value factor. So I multiply this. So I do it here. I multiply this 10 lakhs into present value. So this is the present value of my government loan, and the difference between the amount received.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you in between, but the calculation screen is not visible to us, sir.
मुझे लगा, मुझे संशय था थोड़ा. चलिए, बहुत ही आप सॉरी मत होइए, आप you don't feel sorry. In fact, आपने तो मेरा काम कर दिया. Thank you जी. Allow me a minute and let me see. This is computer.
Yes, sir, it's visible. Yes.
Thank you so much. आप सॉरी मत कहिए, बल्कि सॉरी मुझे कहना. All right, so okay, again going back, I received a loan of about 10 lakhs rupees at the rate of 4%, whereas the market rate is 10%, and here is the term is tenure is 10%. So I calculated this as a present value of 10 lakhs rupees. This is the PV factor, is the present value. Now the difference between these two amount, which is the nominal value of loan or the amount proceeds received minus minus this is the government loan, is the government grant. This is the government grant. So in my books of accounts, as with the erstwhile balance sheet, this was shown on the liability side as the government loan. Correct? Government loan from the government. It was presented. Just wait. Participants, hello, are you comfortable with this example? आपको अच्छा लगा ये example? हाँ या ना बताइए please. मुझे प्रतिसाद दीजिए आपका. Hello. So this was a loan recognized at 10 lakhs rupees as per the previous gap, as per the erstwhile ES. Now I have to measure at the fair value. So my entry for this on the date of transition is first journal entry is debit D government loan by this means debit government loan and credit government grant. Correct, sir? Now the carrying value of my loan, my carrying value of the loan is like this.
Sir, I might have to interrupt you again. Sir, I think this is not the correct screen that we all can see. आपका कैलकुलेशन वाला पार्ट नहीं सर दिख रहा है, और जो आप बोल रहे हैं उससे मैच नहीं कर रहा है सर. So maybe another Excel sheet. Yes sir. Yes sir. This is the one. जी sir.
Sorry. क्षमा कीजिएगा my friends. I'm so sorry. There were two Excel files open and इसके लिए I'm sorry about it. Okay, the 10 lakhs is the loan carrying value, and this is the interest rate at which I got the loan. This is the market rate of interest. This is the tenure. I found the present value. The present value of the loan is 385. So my the grant is so much, and the carrying value of the loan is 3,85,000 rupees. But now you say that, sir, the carrying value is 385, but we will end up paying 10 lakhs rupees only at the end of year 10. So what we'll do, we'll apply the unwinding of discount, and that is this. That is this, the unwinding of discount. That means at the end of year 10, my loan should become 10 lakhs rupees. Computer G, let us see that whether the loan becomes 10 lakhs at the end of year 10 or not. As I told you, this is known as the unwinding of discount. मैडम अभी आपके पास स्क्रीन बराबर आ रहा है ना? हेलो,
बिल्कुल सर,
बिल्कुल सही जवाब कंप्यूटर जी. चलिए, आपने थोड़े हमें तब्दील कर दिया, but I'm sorry about that. See, at the end of year 10, this loan has become 10 lakhs rupees, and the entire procedure which I done here is known as the unwinding of discounting. Unwinding of discount. Okay, sir. So now I'll give the entry for this as well. I will give entry for this as well. चलिए computer जी entry pass करते हैं unwinding of discounting for the end of year 1, that is 31st March 2019. Entry will be like this: finance cost oblique interest cost, and debit 38,000 and credit government loan. So my government loan is increasing every year with this amount, this अंत में वो होगा 10 lakhs rupees. अब आप पूछेंगे सर हमें इसकी एंट्री बताया गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट की. Now let us presume that this government grant is given for plant and equipment and which is a useful life of 10 years time. Okay, now this loan will be released to the profit and loss account every year in the same proportion as the asset is being used. I got 74 want presentation, cheap and worse presentation. What do you mean by cheap and worse presentation? No, please repeat because the screen was not. Please repeat again. Organize, please, sir. Okay, we're not getting the. It's bouncing. You're not getting this bouncing. Okay, all right. Do you want me to explain this concept of government grant once again? All right, I'll explain it to afresh. You had received a government loan at 4%. Market rate is 10%. IND AS 101 requires that government below market rate government loan is to be measured at fair value. And market rate है 10%, आपको मिल रहा है 4%. So जो relief you are getting as compared to the market rate of interest is to be construed as a government grant. Under the earlier gap AS, I had not done this bifurcation because that is not required. But under the IND AS, read with IND AS 109 and read with IND AS 20, this 10 lakhs rupees is to be bifurcated into the present value and the government grant. Why? Because government has indirectly given you a loan at reduced rate, तो आपने government ने आपको दी है grant. So the reduction or the some kind of relief given by the government in the interest is considered as a government grant. So this is so then what do I do? At 10%, which is the market rate, I find the present value of 10 lakhs rupees. Now 10%, if I do the pair value, it is calculated 1 upon the 1 plus 10% raised to power of 10. I get the present value of 3,84,085,000 rupees. This is the present value of my government loan. This is the nominal value oblique the proceeds received from the government loan. The difference between the nominal value and the present value is considered as a government grant. मेरी अगली बैलेंस शीट में ये थी loan of 10 lakhs rupees. But now, since I have to recognize the fair value of the loan at just 3,85,000 rupees, I need to debit the government loan by 6,14,457 and recognize the government grant of 6,14,657. So I pass an entry on 1st of April 2018 that debit the government loan 6,14,000 and credit the government grant by 6,14,000. So this entry I pass. So on my date of transition, the government loan will now be shown at 3,85,543 and not as per the 10 lakhs rupees. But you asked me the question, sir, we have to pay this loan of 10 lakhs rupees at the end of year 10. So I mean, our carrying value is 385, but you need to pay 10 lakhs rupees. So how you will come at 10 lakhs rupees? So this is known as the unwinding of discounting. I will increase my government loans carrying value every year by unwinding the discounting. That means I will increase every year by 10%. At what rate I have measured the present value at 10%. So by 10%, my loan will go up every year. So this is the entry 10%. So this is the balance of the bank loan, government loan at the end of every year, first year and 424, then this, and then at the end of year 10, it becomes 10 lakhs. And when I make a payment of 10 lakhs rupees, my entry is bank loan account debit to bank. Ab dekhiye every year what entry you pass going forward. Since your loan is increasing by 10%, your entry is finance cost account debit 38,554 and credit the government loan account. So this loan will eventually become 10 lakhs rupees. And as far as this government grant is concerned, which is recognized on 1st April 2018, will be released to the profit loss account every year presuming in the same manner at 10%, then it will be like this. Every year, entry will be passed for recognition of government grant as under the debit government grant and credit government grant P&L count. So every year, this will be divided by 10. So this is 10, and again, this is 10. Now, just I want to know from you guys, is this clear to you? Yes or no? If it is not clear, then I will again explain this to you. Charuji, please, you can ask the people.
Ji, sir. So Mr. Sunil Saxena wants to speak.
Yeah. Sunil ji, please बताइए. Hello. Hello. चारू जी.
हेलो. यस सर.
हाँ जी सुनील जी बोलिए.
सर एक्चुअली मुझे दो चीजों में क्वेरी आ रहा है सर.
बोलिए.
सर पहली थिंग ये है कि हम इंडियस में जब आते हैं तो हम इक्विटी और डेप्ट को सेपरेट कर देते हैं, राइट? ये इक्विटी का कंपोनेंट है, डेप्ट का कंपोनेंट है. एंड सेकंड थिंग जो ये आप कह रहे हो लोन का जो ग्रांट का
हैंग ये आपकी मिथ है कि इंडेस में आते हैं तो डेट और इक्विटी में ही तब्दील करते हैं, ये गलत बात है. नॉट नेसेसरी.
नाउ मेरे को प्रेजेंट वैल्यू कैश इनफ्लो तो मेरा 10 लाख ही है ना, मुझे अभी इंस्टेंटली तो 10 लाख मिल रहा है गवर्नमेंट से.
मिला है आपको समझो ये मिल चुका है, 2018 को मिल चुका है मान लीजिए. ओके
ठीक है.
दिस इज माय डेट ऑफ ट्रांजिशन. फाइनेंशियल ईयर 2017-18 के एंड में आपको मिला है 10 लाख रुपया एंड दिस इज योर डेट ऑफ ट्रांजिशन. बोलिए सर अभी.
एंड आफ्टर दैट आप ये कह रहे हैं कि मुझे रीपेमेंट करनी है 10 साल के बाद, और ये मेरा प्रिंसिपल जो है वो ऑटोमेटिकली बढ़ता ही रहेगा. मैं रीपे 1 रुपया नहीं करूंगा प्रिंसिपल का. ओनली आई नीड टू पे द इंटरेस्ट अमाउंट. एंड यू आर सेइंग दैट यू आर टेकिंग द इंटरेस्ट ऑन cumulative basis. Firstly you book the amount and you are going to repay on 10 lakh.
Yeah.
Right. Now the question is that if I am not paying, then this will cause a problem because the bank loan has been given to me on repayment basis at the rate of 4%, and that EMI component that contain principal and interest also.
My dear friend, if the loan has been is there's the EMI, is there's the repayment of schedule and all these, then you here I presume that you're making the bullet payment. अगर आप हर साल कुछ पेमेंट करते हैं तो that will be reduced from this amount. Hello.
Yes.
Make a prepayment, then dear friend, you have to structure the cash flow. You have to structure the cash flow, and then you see that how much you are paying. If that is case, then in this case by this amount it will be reduced here, and you have to restructure your this repayment schedule.
Fine. Then what about my 6% incremental payment? That's a grant I am getting. So what should I crediting to the P&L account?
जनाब ये जो आप क्रेडिट करें ना every month, every year. देखिए you pass 2 entries. Can you see the 2 entries here?
Yes.
Yeah. First is the finance cost. Second is the government grant जो है इसके आप डेबिट करके उसको P&L में ले रहे हैं ना सर?
No, it should be on the credit side ना. Grant cost is the credit side we are getting. देखो
जो लोन जो आपके है ना सर, जो आप
लोन तो 4% पे है ना सर.
सुनो तो सही, मेरी बात सुनो तो सही. जो भी है whatever amount is there, the loan, this principal amount of loan is bifurcated into 2 parts. One is principal amount of the loan and second is a government grant. Government grant कम होती जाएगी and loan आपका बढ़ते जाएगा 10% के.
Okay.
Yes. बाद में चाहिए तो I can share one more example later on. I'll share my email ID and on a one-to-one basis I can share one actual working of a company by deleting the name of that file. Okay?
Okay, fine sir. Okay.
But it all depends on the repayment. अगर यही repayment होता तो I would have restructured my cash flow statement and accordingly my present value would have been calculated based on that. Okay? Hello.
Hanji sir, I think the point is clear.
Okay. Now, can you see the PowerPoint presentation on your screen?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Ji. So this is one example of the government grant which you need to recognize. All right. Then there is something about the estimates. Now here I'll give one example and then we'll move forward. Now, as far as estimates are concerned, you are not supposed to make any use of the hindsight. Hindsight means any development which has taken place later on. Now, no hindsight. Now, let us take example. Just change the date here. For example, the entity makes the provision on 31st March 2018 for rupees 1 lakh. 31st March 2018 को आपके बुक्स में प्रावधान है प्रोविजन का 1 lakh rupees. By the time entity prepares the first IND AS financial statement on 31st March 2019 and 2020, the said liability was settled for 80,000 rupees. 31 मार्च 2018 को आपकी liability provision है 1 लाख रुपया. And now you then after that, the standard says that such information treated as a non-existing event after the reporting period in accordance with IND AS 10 and it is not to be considered. So 31 मार्च 2018 को आपने एक प्रोविजन किया था 1 लाख जो वास्तव में 80,000 में सेटल हुआ. But when you are making the IND AS balance sheet, ignore this fact that you paid less than what you provided for. वही 1 लाख को आप आगे बढ़ाते जाइए. That's what they say. And now about estimate is concerned, there are 2-3 types of estimates. Okay. एक estimate है. This is one category, this is another category, and this is the third category. There is one estimate whereby the recognition is required as per the previous gap, and recognition is also required as per the IND AS. Measurement is also required as per the previous gap on the without discounting, and IND AS is also required measurement. No adjustment is made here. One example: you made a provision in your books of accounts for the short-term provision, say about 1 lakh rupees. You recognize in your books of accounts as per the previous gap. अगर आप IND AS करते तो भी आपको ये लेना पड़ता. आपने 1 लाख रुपए भी उसे लिया है. IND AS भी कहते हैं कि since it is a short-term provision, it need not be discounted. You will not make any changes in such provision. Second बात करते हैं. एक चीज का आपने provision किया, which is required as per the IND AS. Yes. Required as per the IGAP also, yes. But measurement, there is a change in the basis. Since this provision is pertaining to say 5 years time, IND AS does not require discounting, whereas IGAP does not require the discounting. Previous gap does not require the discounting, but IND AS require the discounting. So you will make adjustment by making the discounting. 1 लाख रुपए का प्रावधान किया है. Payment is after 5 years. You have recognized at 1 lakh rupees only in your books of accounts. अगर आप IND AS provide करते, अगर IND AS follow करते, तो you would have to discounting it to the present value. So what adjustment you will make in this estimate is provide for the discounting and pass an entry for that. Third is recognition is not required as per the IND AS. Recognition is not required as per the previous gap, but recognition is required as per the IND AS. So you will recognize both. अगर आपने recognize नहीं किया है, तो measure भी नहीं किया होगा. So in that case, you have to recognize both the amount. Now here is an example of the estimate which was not required as per the IGAP, but required as per the IND AS. So that will you have to provide. For example, there is a restructuring obligation which was not recognized by you, so you have not made the provision for the restructuring obligation. So when you make the restructuring obligation, you make it afresh on 1st April 2018 by taking into account the, if any rental rates, if any interest rate, if any exchange rate, whatever is there, taking those into account, you make a fresh adjustment of the provision. So that means you recognize the provision on the first day of recognition, that is date of transition 1st April 2018. Alright sir, and now this, so अब बात आती है बहुत ही रोचक. Now we'll be talking about the number crunching, and it is this. This is voluntary exemptions. These are about 20 items, 22 items for which there is a voluntary exemption. And what do you mean by voluntary? That means if you want, you can avail of the exemption. If you don't want, you apply retrospectively. In other words, if you are claiming exemption voluntarily, you will be applying this accounting treatment prospectively. In other words, you will not do the retrospective application. But if you are not claiming this voluntary exemption, then you will apply this accounting treatment retrospectively and not prospectively. Very important is the designated pre-value financial instruments. These are just here. Yeah. First is the business combination. It is so detailed that they have assigned one appendix only for business combination exemption. Appendix C to IND AS 101 lays down the business combination exemption. We'll discuss in detail later on. Second is the share. Now there is Appendix D. Appendix D contains many examples of the voluntary example standards. Like for example, share-based transaction, insurance contract, fair value or revaluation of the deemed cost, leases, cumulative translation differences on the foreign exchange translation, investment in subsidiaries, assets, liabilities. These are various exemptions for the application of the retrospective application. And there, if you want, you can apply it, you can avail of it, or you cannot avail of it. But ideally, it's our experience that people mostly have availed of the voluntary exemptions. And friends, the most commonly applied is the exemption about the property, plant, equipment. I'll discuss in great detail. Second is about the subsidiaries going before or after adopting, who is adopting first, who is adopting after. And certain practical examples also I'll discuss. Now, IND AS 102, dealing with the equity instrument, that is ESOP, that equity-based share-based transactions, right? Cash-based, equity-based transactions. So in this case, retrospective account of the share-based payment is to be done only for the unvested. When it comes to the share-based equity payments, ELS, that there are two things. One is the grant date, second is the vesting date, and third is the exercise date. Now, if it is granted before the date of transition, but it is unvested, that means the grant date is say 1st April 2016 and the vesting date is 31st March 2021. So that means these are unvested options. Now in that case, you will apply IND AS 102 retrospectively. But if the grant date was 1st April 2015 and the vesting date is 31st March 2017 and the shares options are yet to be exercised, still you are not required to apply this IND AS 102 retrospectively, and you may forget it. That's what they need to say. And there's the leases. So how many of you are aware of the new standard of leases, sir? You know that IND AS 116 is totally topsy-turvy, right, sir? Hello? Now there's a lot of changes. There's no operating lease from the perspective of the lessee, save and except the short-term leases and the small leases. Correct, sir? So now they have to see that may assess whether the contract existing at the date of transition meet the condition as per the 116. Now, for example, let us take one case. Date of transition is 1st April 2018, and there is one lease which was for 20 years. There was one lease, operating lease, which was the 20 years. And under the previous gap, we have applied, why previous gap? Even in this 17 also, you have treated this as a operating lease in the books of the lessee. And that lease is expiring on say 31st January 2019. That lease is expiring on 31st January 2019. So from 1st April 2018 till 31st March 2019, it is expiring within 12 months. So it can be treated as a short-term lease, and then entity can apply that since it is a short-term lease, we will not account for IND AS 116. What you have essentially done, you have not considered the fact that this lease was for a period of 20 years. You not consider, because you consider this, you apply this conditions application on the date of transition, which is 1st April 2018. 1st April 2018 के बाद हम उसकी अवधि गिने तो केवल 11 महीने की रहती है, 10 महीने की रहती है. Since it is less than 12 months, we will ignore the accounting treatment as per 116 and will continue to recognize the operating lease expenses. In other words, you will not recognize the ROU asset, correct? And again, when the lease is comprised of land and building, you'll divide as per that. The point is that you will take into account the all conditions existing at the date of the transition. Now is on the date of transition, suppose if there is one lease agreement which you need to apply as per 116, then you used to recognize the 11 ROU asset. An amount equal to the lease liability, test the right of asset use, see whether this impairment is required or not. Now let us take one example that you have a lease from 1st April 2015 for a period of 20 years. How many years have expired after 1st April 2015 to the date of transition? 15, 16, 16, 17, and 17, 18. You have two choices. Either you apply retrospectively, that means you calculate all the annual lease payments, bring it to the present value, and pass an entry on 1st April, on 1st April 2015 as under ROU asset account debit to lease obligations into bracket present value. या तो आप ये कीजिए, that means you are applying retrospectively. But if you don't want to apply retrospectively, apply fully prospectively. So what you do now, from 1st April 2018, that means you're forgetting, you're ignoring, you're not recognizing the lease accounting from 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18. So ignore those things. Whatever the lease payments which are remaining to be paid on and from 1st April 2018, you plot them year-wise, month-wise, quarter-wise, half-monthly, whatever is the mode of payments. Bring it to the present value, pass an entry, debit ROU asset account, and credit the lease obligations. This will be at the present value. So what essentially you've done, you have not taken into account the preceding years, accounting years. You simply applied from the 1st April 2018. So this is, and then you may also use some other practical expedients. Okay, not to recognize the short-term, long-term. Then very important thing, the initial direct cost. You may have incurred some initial direct cost when you enter into lease agreement. So you may exclude this cost because initial direct cost is otherwise, as per the IND AS 116, is required to be a part of the ROU asset. The point is that you can ignore the whatever has happened before 31st March 2018 and have a fresh look at the this thing. Now is very, very important, sir. Tell me one thing, how many of you have a hand-on experience of the IND AS 1? Okay, someone asked me the question, sir, IND AS 116 is applicable from 1st April 2019. Then why do we apply on 1st April 2018? Very good question. Charoji, who is asked this question? Nitesh Kumar? Nitesh Kumar, right?
Yes, sir.
Nitesh Kumar, I think I must draw your attention to you I must draw your attention to this aspect very clearly. If you recollect, I mentioned that our date of transition is 1st April 2018. Accounting year 18-19 is the, yes, someone has said very correctly. Accounting 18-19 is the comparative and 19-20 is the date, is the first time adopter. The standard says that use the same accounting policies in preparation of the opening IND AS balance sheet, in restating the comparatives, which is 18-19, and naturally while preparing 19-20. The same policy which are effective on the first IND AS reporting period. Now, gentlemen, Nitesh Kumar, what is my first IND AS reporting period? Nitesh Kumar ji, please, unko unmute kijiye, please. Kindly unmute Nitesh Kumar ji, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hello. 31st March 2020 is my 31st March 2020 is my someone has given a correct answer. CS Sunny, I can't read in the message. 31st March 2020 is my first IND AS reporting period. उस दिन जो भी standard applicable है, I have to apply the same accounting policies and standards while preparing my first opening Ind AS financial statement on April 2018 and 18-19 also. Nitesh Kumarji, are you clear? Tell me yes or no.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. How many of you have the hand-on practical experience of the Ind AS? How many of you have done the Ind AS practically? No, I presume no. Okay, fine. ये standard जो है, now the things which I'm going to discuss now is going to be very, very interesting. See, as far as the measurement criteria is concerned, as I told you, Appendix D is comprised of many standards, and for which you can have the voluntary exemption. For this, you have the voluntary exemptions. In other words, if you want to apply retrospectively, apply it. Otherwise, apply prospectively. So, measurement option for property, plant, equipment, intangible assets, and investment property. Basically, these three non-current assets के लिए ये बहुत important discussion हो रहा है. बेनती है, गुजारिश है कि please give proper attention. तीन options हैं ये तीनों के लिए, except investment property. You fair value on the date of transition as the deemed cost. आपके पास प्रॉपर्टी प्लान इक्विपमेंट है, आपके पास इंटेंजिबल एसेट्स है, इसे आप 1 अप्रैल 2018 को फेयर वैल्यू कीजिए एंड कंसीडर दिस फेयर वैल्यू एज अ डीम्ड कॉस्ट गोइंग फॉरवर्ड. सिंपल बात है. बट व्हेन यू डू दिस फेयर वैल्यू, मान लीजिए यू हैव गॉट 50 आइटम्स ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी प्लान इक्विपमेंट एंड यू डिसाइडेड टू मेजर फेयर वैल्यू 30 आइटम्स as per the fair value as per the Ind AS. Baki 20 items ko you have to apply retrospectively. So I would advise, when you do fair value, effectively do fair value of all the assets. Otherwise, you have to apply them. You have to apply account balance 20 items as a retrospective, which is very difficult and time consuming. Second option, दूसरा पर्याय ये है, to consider previous gap carrying value on the date of transition as deemed cost. मान लीजिए 31 मार्च 2018 को आपके पास प्रॉपर्टी प्लान इक्विपमेंट है, इंटेंजिबल एसेट्स है एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रॉपर्टी. आप बोलेंगे सर यहाँ पे आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रॉपर्टी का जिक्र नहीं किया, यहाँ पे कर रहे हैं. क्यों? रीजन बीइंग, इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रॉपर्टी इवन ऑन द डेट ऑफ ट्रांजिशन कैन नॉट बी मेजर्ड एट फेयर वैल्यू. क्योंकि as far as investment property is concerned, which is Ind AS 40, there is no option of fair value for the subsequent measurement. And to keep in line with that, even on the date of transition, investment property cannot be measured at fair value. And that's why I have mentioned here, exception investment property. So other than investment property, what you can do, you can fair value the property, plant, equipment or intangible assets and then leave aside the investment property. Second option, मान लीजिए आपको fair value नहीं करना है. Sir, we don't want to do fair value, it's very time consuming, very expensive. So Ind AS 101 Appendix D paragraph 7AA is giving an option that to consider the previous gap carrying amount on the date of transition as the deemed cost. Don't do any changes. Don't do any changes except one change. क्या है? I'll show it to you. Okay. So guys, are you clear about this? Hello, are you clear about this? That two options are there. Yes or no? Yes. Can we? Yeah, I am coming to that. I'm coming to that. This is not the end of it. This slides are going to. This topic is consumed at least 6 to 7 slides. Now let us go. Fair value as deemed cost on the date of transition for property, plant, equipment and intangible assets, and not for the investment property, because for investment property we have said it is not proper, it is not applicable. Paragraph D, Appendix D, paragraph 5, 6 and 7 are the guidance paragraph for this. Let us take example of property, plant, equipment and intangible assets, because investment property as of now till August August 2020, investment property cannot be measured at fair value There was a consideration, there is still a consideration, investment property may be considered as a fair value, but it is not decided as yet. Okay, fair value on the date of transition is this deemed cost? Yes, yes. Now, fair value option, is it cherry picked? Yes or yes. What do you mean by cherry pick? Someone asked me a question, can we be selective? Answer is yes. So let us say that you have 10 items of property, plant and equipment, and you have 10 items of intangible assets. But you want to fair value out of this 10, only 6 items for the property, plant and equipment at fair value. And same is the case with the intangible assets, that only 6 items you want to fair value on the date of transition. Can you do so? Yes, you can do so. Technically, this is known as a cherry pick model. All right, हमने 10 property plant item को fair value किए, हमने 10 item of intangible assets को fair value किए, बाकी 4 का क्या है ना? So if fair value options for the few assets is not exercised, which is 4 and 4, then what to do? Such other assets for which FV fair value on the date of transition is not considered as a deemed cost, they are required to be accounted for retrospectively. So मेरी हिदायत है आपसे, मेरी गुजारिश है कि अगर करना है, दो cherry pick model is permitted, but don't do so. Do the fair valuation of all the property, plant, equipment. Otherwise, you'll have to do retrospective application for the others which is not accounted for at a fair value. Investment property में ये question नहीं आता, because investment property cannot be measured at fair value. Would the selection for fair value on the basis of the assets basis? I didn't understand the question. Pooja Sharma. Pooja Sharma ji, my host co-host, please विनती करता हूँ कि पूजा को जरा unmute कीजिए, because her question is intriguing. I not understand the question. Would the selection of for fair value be on the basis of the class of assets? Madam, हमने आपको कहा कि all the items, you know, I mean, cherry pick model is available. Now, since you refer to the class, I understand your question now. See, land is one class, building is another class, equipment is another class. So you can fair value only one class, that is land. Absolutely no issue about it. And you cannot measure, you don't prefer to measure the property, plant, equipment at the fair value, that is permissible, no issue about that. So cherry pick model, you can choose any class, you can choose any item within the class also. You could be selected not vis-a-vis class, but vis-a-vis items within the class also, you could be selective. All right. Now, treatment of accumulated depreciation or amortization impairment losses. You have considered you have considered the fair value for property, plant, equipment, for intangible assets. Then what is the impact? What is the treatment of the accumulated depreciation on the date of transition? I'll share one Excel sheet with you, entry with you, and then. But besides that, let me consider this. Any specific disclosure required? Yes. So when you fair value any item of property, plant, equipment, intangible assets on the date of transition, you have to make one additional disclosure also, and that is this. The entity's first IND AS financial statement shall disclose for each line item. जो भी line item आपने fair value की है in the opening balance sheet, two things for these fair valued item, the aggregate of those for value. मान लीजिए आपने 6 item में aggregate valuation किया 6 lakh, so you will say the aggregate value of the fair values is 6 lakhs into 6 item is 36 lakhs. Then the aggregate adjustment for the carrying value, so we have made adjustment of 6 lakhs rupees, and after doing adjustment, whatever is the carrying value, you will mention that about. So this is the disclosure required about the fair value. Now friends, I will show you one Excel file. Now before that, मुझे चारू जी से पूछने दीजिए कि चारू जी, can you see the Excel file before you? Hello guys, can you see the Excel file before you, sir? Yes sir. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Now I'll give you one journal entry for fair valuation of property, plant, equipment, and intangible assets. The date is 1st April 2018. The situation on 31st March was like this. Situation on 31st March 18 was like this. Cost, accumulated depreciation, and the carrying value. Cost is 10 lakhs, and next this my accumulated depreciation was 6 lakhs and the carrying value was 4 lakhs. So the standard says that you need to de-recognize the accumulated depreciation when you do the fair value. So my entry, first entry will be like this: debit accumulated depreciation, the amount is 6 lakhs, and credit the cost of property, plant, equipment, because I need to de-recognize my accumulated depreciation. All right. Now, what is the cost of my property, plant, equipment? It was like this. It was how much earlier? 10 lakhs. And then now I'm reducing the accumulated depreciation as a result of this entry. As a result of this entry, I'm reducing from my cost of this. So my carrying value now becomes how much, sir? Carrying value is. Are you clear up to here? This, please, guys. Are you clear up to here? Because अब जो बात है वो बहुत रोचक होने वाली है. Can you see the Excel slide? Can you see the numbers 10 lakhs, 6 lakhs, and 4 lakhs?
Yes, sir. The numbers are visible.
Because when two participants say they change the slides, I think they need to change their setting.
Sir, if there is, they are asking for change in the slide, that means there is some network issue on their part, sir, not on our part.
Not on my
On our part, sir, everything is running smoothly. The minute we come to know that there is some problem, we'll let you know, sir.
Okay, fine. So, all right. So, guys, be clear at your end. Now, standard says that you need to recognize the accumulated depreciation, and now I'm revaluing my this property plant revalued at. It's revalued at say 12 lakhs rupees. It is revalued at 12 lakhs rupees. So how much increase is 8 lakhs rupees? For this, I pass an entry: debit property, plant, equipment. This minus this 8 lakhs rupees, and credit. Be careful. Deferred tax liability and credit retained earnings. My dear friends, I'm passing this entry in my retained earnings. Let's presume the tax rate is 20%. So this into 20 is my deferred tax liability. Revaluation amount minus deferred tax liability is 6,40,000 rupees. So this is going to be credited to my retained earnings, 6 lakhs rupees, 6,40,000. Going forward, this will not be considered as my revaluation reserve. Mind you well, going forward, this is not going to be construed, treated, accounted for as a revaluation reserve, because this is considered as a cost, deemed cost. And now I'll tell you one more thing, that this is the revaluation retained earnings, revaluation amount. The revaluation amount is 8 lakhs rupees. So my revised carrying value is 12 lakhs rupees. So what I'm supposed to disclose in my, what is the disclosure required is I have to disclose that the carrying value, the total amount of the fair value amount addition is 6,40,000 rupees. 8 lakhs rupees is the addition of the fair value, and the total aggregate carrying value, the amount assets which is being fair value, is 12 lakhs. So I have to disclose two amounts: A, the 12 lakhs, and B, the 8 lakhs. 12 lakhs is the carrying value, the item revalued, and 8 lakhs is the carrying value of, is the adjustment made of the fair value on the date of transaction to the property. The same thing is applied to the intangible assets also, but not to investment property, because investment property is not to be measured at fair value. Now there is one question: if we choose option the previous gap carrying amount value previous, CA Gaurav ji, thoda dheeraj rakhiye. Right now I'm talking only about the fair value option. I'm coming to paragraph D7A in 2 minutes from now. Okay. All right. Now let us go to the PPT. Okay, now I believe so. You can now see PPT on your screen. Am I right, sir? Can you see the PPT?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So the whole saga was about if you choose the option of fair value on the date of transition to measure the property, plant, equipment, and intangible assets at the fair value. But now this is again the fair value in the deemed cost. Even if you've done in past, that is perfectly all right. Now let's come to the very important aspect. And majority of entities in India on the date of transition has availed of this exemption, which is before you. Paragraph D7AA means paragraph 7AA of Appendix D to IND AS 101. It says that previous gap carrying value.
अच्छा, अब मैम एक ओके, sorry.
Kindly unmute yourself, please. Thank you so much.
Really, sir, my apologies. There is Amit sir had joined your session, तो वो एकदम से
अरे कोई बात नहीं, कोई
really my apologies.
अरे छोड़ो यार, इतनी छोटी भाषा में एपोलॉजी इतनी भारी शब्द का इस्तेमाल करेंगे तो हमारा काम कैसे चलेगा? ये तो एक जिंदगी का पहलू है, हो जाता है, कोई बात. Now, if entity decides to avail of the exemption given, voluntary exemption given in paragraph 7AA of Appendix D to IND AS 101, what happens? In the first place, it is applicable to all the three types of non-current immovable properties, property, plant, equipment, intangible assets, and investment property. All of three are covered here. Previous years carrying value on the dot as deemed costs, yes. That means, coming back to the example of ours, that 6 lakhs for the carrying cost, 10 lakhs for the carrying cost, 6 lakhs was the accumulated depreciation, and 4 lakhs was the carrying value. So I will consider 4 lakhs as the carrying value, as the deemed cost, as per the IND AS going forward. Is this option cherry pick? No. That means you cannot be selective. अगर आपने ये पर्याय option opt किए हैं, that means you cannot be selective, you cannot be choosy. जो भी आपके आइटम है प्रॉपर्टी, प्लांट, इक्विपमेंट, उसको आप अप्लाई कीजिए 3 days previous cost, you have to do that. But now there should not be any misunderstanding. We have 3 limbs: A, property, plant, equipment; B, intangible assets; and 3, investment. For property, plant, equipment, you decided that you want to apply paragraph 7AA. Fine. जो भी आइटम है प्रॉपर्टी, प्लांट, इक्विपमेंट की, सभी आइटम को आप मेजर कीजिए, continue to measure at the original cost. No changes. But here you have to pass at least one entry, and that is this: accumulated depreciation and losses, accumulated impairment losses till the date of transition is to be derecognized. So you will pass an entry here that debit accumulated depreciation 6 lakhs and credit property, plant, equipment 6 lakhs. Now आपकी carrying value या cost बन जाएंगी 4 lakhs rupees as the opening cost on date of transition to IND AS, and there will be 0 accumulated depreciation. Are you clear? Now let us come to intangible assets. For intangible assets, you want to go for the fair value option. That is possible. Magar, if you have decided to consider the previous gap carrying value on the dot as a deemed cost even for intangible assets, then for all intangible assets you have to exercise this option only, and you cannot be selective and then say, no, I want to exercise this option with previous carrying amount and बाकी को मैं fair value कहूंगा नहीं. जहां तक इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रॉपर्टी का सवाल है, आपके पास कोई पर्याय है ही नहीं, because investment property have to be measured at the previous gap carrying value only. Previous investment property को fair value का पर्याय है ही नहीं. All right. Treatment of the accumulated, this is to be derecognized. Any specific disclosure required? अगर आप paragraph 7AA का exemption जो है, if you adopt this exemption, then you have to make one disclosure, and that is pursuant to paragraph 27AA of IND AS 101. क्या है? The fact and the accounting policy shall be disclosed by the entity until such time that those items of property, plant, equipment, investment property, or intangible assets, as the case may be, are significantly depreciated, impaired, or derecognized from the entity's balance sheet. That means till such time any one of the item is there in the balance sheet, you to continue to make this disclosure in your accounting policy statements, in the notes to account कि हमने जब IND AS अख्तियार किए थे तब we have claimed this exemption of paragraph 7AA of appendix D to IND AS 101. Majority of companies have exercised this option. Okay, sir. And let's see now.
Sir, just a reminder for you. You wanted to share some anecdote with us.
I wanted to share the anecdote. Thank you so much. आपने बिल्कुल सही समय पे मुझे दिया है. वो है, friends ध्यान से सुनेगा. It may tantamounts to jumping guns. It may tantamounts to jumping guns क्योंकि मैं एक अलग point पे आ रहा हूँ and वो point है presentation. वो point है presentation. And Charuji, do you have access to the Division 2, Schedule 3 to the Companies Act?
No, sir, not at the moment.
Any of the participants, हमारे बहुत CA सहाध्यायी हैं, participants हैं, मेरे मित्र हैं CA गण से, तो मैं उनसे विनती करता हूँ, अनुरोध करता हूँ कि Division 2, Schedule 2 open कीजिए, and I wanted them to read out something, but in the meanwhile I'll tell you something. सर प्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स, जैसे कहा कि फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट जो है बहुत ही कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सब्जेक्ट है. फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स हैव टू बी प्रेजेंटेड ऑन टू वेज, इन टू क्लासिफिकेशंस, ईदर करंट और नॉन करंट. फाइन, वी अंडरस्टैंड. बट IND AS में ध्यान रखिए कि दो स्टेटमेंट्स आपकी जिंदगी में ऑलवेज रहते हैं, एंड एक है standalone financial statements, दूसरे है consolidated financial statement. One is a standalone financial statement, second is a consolidated financial statements. Presentation, surprisingly, is very different of particular kind of investment in standalone financial statements as compared to the consolidated financial statements. अब मैं धीरे धीरे technical point पे आता हूँ. Investment in joint ventures and associates are now accounted for using the equity method. Under the previous GAAP, only investment in associates were accounted for using the equity method, and joint control entities' interests were accounted for using the proportionate method. However, under IND AS, I am repeating, investment in associates and investments in JVs are both accounted for using the equity method. Fine. Guys, are you aware of this provision? Hello? Yes or no? I am not discussing about something which is concerned, which is covered in the slide. Charuji, आपके पास slide क्या है? Which is the slide before you?
The cumulative translation.
Yeah. But don't worry, don't get panicked. Some people are telling me, please change the slides. I am discussing something out jumping the gun. इनका हिंदी में अनुवाद ये होता है कि मैं इस slide पे बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं किसी और topic पे बात कर रहा हूँ, जनाब. So इसलिए I am not changing the slides. So don't get paranoid, don't get frustrated. I am talking about something anecdote which is very interesting, provided you want to be very vigile and we want to learn in depth. If you want to know the nuances of this, and that's why I'm taking all the trouble. When it comes to the disclosure of the financial investment in subsidiaries and in associates in the standalone financial statements, they have to be classified as a financial assets. In other words, financial assets के नीचे उसको लिखा जाता है. किसको classify किया जाता है, present किया जाता है. किसको? Investment in subsidiaries, investment in associates and JVs. Subsidiaries भी आता है, but subsidiary consumer नहीं आ रही, इसलिए इसका जिक्र नहीं कर रहा हूँ. Now, when it comes to the same company, same financial year, consolidated financial statements, the presentation of investments in associates and JVs, which is accounted for using the equity method, is not presented, is not shown under the financial assets, but it is shown outside the financial assets in the balance sheet. They are not shown in the under the financial asset, but outside the financial assets. Charuji, guys, would you like to see the example of this? Hello? Would you like to see the example of this? No one has said you are aware of this provision. Thank you so much. If you are aware of it, I salute you, and I'm glad that you are aware of this thing and very happy about this. So, Charuji, if you allow me to just pause, now there'll be, I'm posing, and I'm this presentation will be freeze. So, guys, don't fret and don't get paranoid that this slide is not changed. Allow me to change the slide, please. Thank you. I'll come back to you in a minute, in less than a minute, please. So don't get worried that by mistake I'm doing so. This is going to make your understanding very clear. Seeing is believing, and when you see the examples, you'll understand the difference, and you'll be able to appreciate that yes, what I say is what. Naruji, can you see the on your screen the balance sheet?
Ji sir, it's visible.
You can see that. Okay, now I'm going to increase this size of this. This is the standalone financial statements of a company on 31st March 2019. Investment in subsidiary and in joint venture, which is accounted for using the equity method, is shown in the standalone financial statements under the financial assets. When it comes to the investment in when it comes to the consolidated financial statements, zahir si baat hai that investment in subsidiary will be knocked out. Investment in subsidiary will not appear in the consolidated financial statements, and I'm sure all of us knows this. See the presentation placement, jagah, bahut important. This is not presented as a part of your financial assets, but this is shown outside the financial assets in the consolidated financial statements. What? The same company, same year, investment in joint venture and associates using the equity method is accounted for, is presented outside the financial assets here. Friends, this is where your knowledge, your expertise counts. I'll give an example. I'll share one more anecdote. You know, the ICI gives awards to various companies based on their presentation of financial statements. There were 5 companies whose financial statements were par excellence. Unki presentation, disclosure, notes to accounts, reference, color codification, everything was, mashallah, par excellence. Badhiya tha. But they lost the chance to win the awards because of this. Those companies have presented investment using equity method account in the associated JVs in their consolidated financial statements under the financial assets and not outside the financial assets like the way I have shown it to you here. You get my point, sir? So itni gehrai se aapko padna hai, and maine dobara I'm going to repeat it, that as far as we Indians are concerned, we have to be careful and concerned about the division 2 schedule 3 to the Companies Act, because we are guided by the contents of the presentation of financial statement. That means mainly the profit and loss statement of profit, balance sheet, financial position, and profit and loss account as per the IND AS division 2 schedule 3. Be careful, sir. You have to be very careful about it. So guys, are you clear about this? Yes or no? Hello, is this point clear to you? Hello. My dear CA friend, the one who knew it. All right, sir. So idea is it. कहने का आशय क्या था? What was the rationale? What is my logic behind this? That don't just read the bad standards, read the guidance note issued by ICI for preparation of the financial statements based on Division 2 scheduled to the companies. Now it's time for me to advise you and teach you and tell you how you can improve your knowledge of IND AS. ICI has published battery of materials, umpteen number of materials for the IND AS. One of them is the educational material on all the IND AS. Second is the ITFG bulletin. IND AS Transition Facilitation Group has come out with the ITFG bulletin, and these are freely available on the website. Then there are FAQs on the certain accounting treatment. So these all are included in the material which has been published, and it is available in the public domain, and for you, for which, mind you well, ICI is not charging a single rupee for that. The third clue to read, improve on the IND AS is to read the bare IND AS financial, the bare IND AS standards. And those who really want to be a master blaster for the IND AS, they should go to the ICI site and they should read something called Basis for Conclusion Part 2. Internationally, globally, when the ISAB is issuing the standards, it is issuing in two parts, Part A and Part B. Part A stands for the bare standards. Part B includes application guidance, illustrative examples, and many other, and something very important, basis for conclusion. The paragraph starting with the paragraph, the number of BC, basis of conclusion, is very important. The reason being, it lays down the logic behind a particular accounting treatment. So, though much 2 घंटे में, in just barely 2 hours, it's very difficult to upgrade you with the whole gamut of IND AS 101. So I'm giving you an advance hidayat that read the ITFG materials, read the educational materials, go to the IND AS side B. What is this noise? Hello? चारू जी, ये कहाँ से आवाज आ रही है?
Sir, I think, sir, everyone is on mute.
Someone asked me the logic behind this, the difference in the financials presentation. Pooja ji, Pooja Sharma, मुझसे आप हिदायत है कि please read Division 2, paragraph Division 2, Schedule 3, and if you want a paragraph, I'll give the paragraph number 8.1.8.4 of Division 2, Schedule 3 to the Companies Act. It has the very basis that when it comes to the group, investment in subsidiary, investment in associates and JVs in the consolidated financial statement is not considered as a financial assets. That is the basis, that is the logic, and the logic goes to the roots of IND AS 32 and IND AS 109. Read this paragraph 8.1.8.4, read with one more paragraph number of IND AS 1, and that is paragraph IND AS 1, paragraph 54. So this gives the guidance. My entire presentation is not over. I'm going to finish in next 15-20 minutes time. Not to worry, because it is a very huge thing of IND AS 101. 2 hours are just barely minimum for that. Okay. So I've completed the very, very most applicable practical aspect of the property plant equipment, intangible assets, and the investment property. Now the host, Charuji, do I have the permission to go ahead for another 15 to 20 minutes?
Ji sir, as you feel comfortable.
All right. I hope the participants are comfortable too. All right. Now we talk about the cumulative differences of the foreign exchange translations. Okay. Now here is this thing that translation differences. Now, these are the translation differences and not the foreign exchange transactions. So when you have the foreign operations, like branch, subsidiary, associates and JVs, you translate the financial statements of the foreign operations on the balance sheet day, on the reporting date, into the functional currency by applying the foreign exchange rates on the date, the closing rate on the closing rate on the reporting date. Best option is ignore all this accounting treatment when the option is first time adopted is exempt from transfer of cumulative. In case you applied some other accounting treatment, which in India is same as per the IND AS, so we Indians don't need to do much. But however, if there is any cumulative translation gain and losses sitting in your balance sheet on account of the foreign exchange fluctuations, the best entry option is to remove that. Now you'll ask me, so what is the entry? If there is a foreign exchange reserve on 31st March 2018 to the tune of 2 lakhs, entries debit such reserves and credit the retained earnings. Okay. At one point in time when I was referring to paragraph 46A of AS 11, erstwhile AS 11, I had mentioned that paragraph 46A had permitted entities to debit foreign exchange losses in the profit and loss in the property, plant, equipment, fixed asset, or to create a reserve rather than debiting to the profit and loss account. So in case you have opted for any option under the erstwhile AS 11 paragraph 46A, then you are allowed to continue this treatment under paragraph 13AA of Appendix D in IND AS 101. Is known as long-term foreign currency monetary items. So this is only for a selected cases where you have opted for such option and the erstwhile previous I kept. So you continue to do this till such time this loan is still operating outstanding. Now, very important thing: investment in subsidiaries, jointly controlled entities, and associates in a separate financial statements. You have at one point in time, when I gave the example of the investment in the equity share of a listed company which was neither subsidiary nor JV and nor associate, correct? But here is investment in subsidiary, associates and JVs only. You have option to continue either at the cost or at the deemed fair value. At the fair value as per the IND AS 109 or the previous gap carrying amount can be considered as either the deemed cost, and you are not supposed to do any valuation of these things. So now then you have to make a disclosure. But of investment in unquoted shares other than subsidiary, associates and JVs. Ramanjan College up. Okay. Again, be very attentive. Investments in associates, JVs and subsidiaries, and investments other than investment in subsidiaries, JVs and associates. Two categories. Category 1, you have option to fair value on the date of transition or continue with the same thing. Many companies, practical expedient, they have decided to continue to measure at the cost, previous carrying value. And even going forward, for your information, IND AS 27 gives you that option that investment in subsidiary, associate and JVs may be continued to be carried forward at a cost only or at per 109. But my advice, Hidayat, to you would be that opt for the option of the cost for not just the initial measurement on the date of transition, but even going forward for the subsequent measurement. Please opt for the option given under IS 27 for the investment in associates, subsidiaries and JVs. All right. Now you need to make this disclosure. Then you have investment in unquoted shares other than subsidiaries and JVs and associates. आपका एक investment है private limited company में, and न तो ये private limited company आपकी subsidiary है, न तो associates, न तो JV. क्या करेंगे आप? This have to be fair value mandatorily on the date of connection to IND AS. They cannot be measured at the previous gap carrying value. Be very careful about this when you have investment in this. Now, earlier we talked about the investment in shares of subsidiary, associates, and JVs. And now we are talking about the assets and liabilities of subsidiaries. Now we are talking about the consolidated financial statements. Holding subsidiary and associate of the companies covered by IND AS are required to follow the IND AS regardless of otherwise criteria. Now, holding subsidiary, associate, and JVs of the companies which is liable for the IND AS have to mandatorily apply the IND AS. Now, now here I'm asking one, can parent and subsidiary apply the different exemptions to different policies? Yes, they can. Parent will claim of 10 exemption, subsidiary can avail of the 5 exemption. Post IND AS, what if the parent and subsidiary follow the different method of depreciation? Now here, sir, I am asking this question. Hello, guys, be ready for this conceptual question. Post IND AS, parent is following the WDV and subsidiary is following the SLM. Is it permissible? And yes, it is permissible in their standalone financial statement. But when it comes to the consolidation of the financial statements of the subsidiaries with the parent, will you be required to make any adjustment? Yes or no? But not in console. Everyone is saying yes to make adjustment. जी हाँ दोस्तों, ये है breaking news, and this is where I want you to read the finance accounting standards threadbare. Okay, and don't get paranoid. Nothing to do with the present slides. So don't please pass a comment, change the slides. This is out of the context of this topic. But I want you to understand. I want you to understand conceptually the IND AS and the paradigm changes made by the IND AS. I'm narrating a situation. Hear me out very carefully. Parent A and parent A and subsidiary B. Both follows IND AS. Both follow IND AS. Parent is following the WDV method for the depreciating property, plant, equipment. And subsidiary is following the SLM method for depreciating the property, plant, equipment. जहां तक दोनों के standalone financial के statements की ताल्लुकात है, they are free to follow whatever method they want to. कोई prohibition नहीं है. No restrictions. I'm going one step further and hear me out very clearly. And before I come to that, I want to write one paragraph number which you want. You can verify in this statement. IND AS 16.60 and 61. Point 60 and 61 indicates the paragraph number of IND AS 16. If you are academically interested and if you want to get the endorsement of what I say, please go to this paragraph because you have privy to go to the IND AS 16. You can download it, see paragraph 60, 16. Now I'm narrating the situation. Once again, I'm completing. Separate financial statements, parent is following WDV, subsidiary is following the SLM, no issue. But when it comes to the consolidation also, parent need not, I repeat, need not make any adjustment for the depreciation while preparing the consolidated financial statement. The reason being, if you read paragraph 60 and 61 of IND AS 16, it says very clearly that method of depreciation is an estimate now. The method of depreciation is an estimate now, and it is not a accounting policy anymore. Had it been accounting policy, you would have been required to adjust the SLM to WDV to align with the accounting policy followed by the parent. But अब हालात ये है कि the method of depreciation is not considered as an accounting policy anymore. अब method of depreciation is not an accounting policy. It is an estimate. And as a result of an estimate, different group entities can follow the different estimates. You getting my point, sir? ये बहुत बड़ा बदलाव है सर, paradigm change brought in not just by IND AS IS 16 but even also by the AS 10 revised property plan and equipment. जी हाँ दोस्तों, नॉन IND AS स्टैंडर्ड जो है AS 10 which is a combination of the earlier AS 10 and AS 6 revised, which is applicable to non-IND AS company, is also same treatment, has also the same treatment. वहां पे पैराग्राफ नंबर कुछ और है, यहाँ पे पैराग्राफ नंबर कुछ और है. ठीक है सर, this is what I want you to understand, my dear friends. Correct sir, that read the standards very well. And precisely because of this change, my dear friend, when the method of depreciation is changed from WDV to SLM or vice versa, you are not supposed to apply it retrospectively, but you are supposed to apply it prospectively. Reason being, estimates, change in an estimates are always accounted for prospectively, friend. देखिए साहब, जब आपको ये ज्ञान होता है, when you know this statement, your life become very simple and you don't end up being the lot of rubber and trouble in this के नहीं हमने तो चेंज किया, retrospective करना है, वो नहीं. ध्यान रहे सर, ऐसे पढ़ा जाता है in this. You must read the bad standards, friend, at least once. मान लीजिए एक LLP है जिससे हम कहते हैं कि वो सब्सिडरी है because the parent has a control over this subsidiary, this LLP. तो क्या इसे आप consolidate करेंगे? Answer is yes. That LLP in their standalone financial statements can continue the non-DS accounting standards, but when it comes to the consolidation with the parent has to restate the financial statements of the parent of the LLP or a partnership firm or body AOP or body of individuals as per the IND AS for the limited purpose of consolidation. Again, to repeat, for their individual financial statements, they are free to do non-IND AS क्योंकि partnership firm और LLPs को IND AS applicable नहीं होता है, उनको Companies Act applicable नहीं होता है, and that's the reason they need to follow, but they need to still use the IND AS for the limited purpose of consolidation, and वो शायद parent भी कर सकते हैं. Compound financial statements is very important, is like convertible bonds. If the liability of that is paid off before the date of transition to IND AS, don't do any accounting. अगर ये नहीं है पे की liability and conversion भी हो चुका है, तो भी आपको इसे restate करना है. Now, what is the requirement of the compound financial statements pursuant to IND AS 109? IND AS 109 कहते हैं कि if there is a convertible bond or convertible, compulsorily convertible preference shares, then there are two elements. हमारे एक section ने बताया था कि that is to be divided into two parts, split into two parts, A, debt, B, equity. So if there are any conversion thing, then it is to be classified, bifurcated into debt and equity. अगर वो liability pay हो चुकी है तो कुछ मत कीजिए. अगर conversion हो चुका है मगर liability pay नहीं हुई है, debt portion is yet to be paid, still you have to account for the this IND AS 32 debt and equity, not otherwise. All right. Then de-recognition of the previously recognized financial statements and financial liabilities. अगर आपने कोई हाँ देखिए designation, sorry, it's a designation. De-recognition तो अपना वहाँ पे आया था, कहाँ पे mandatory exception. अब देखिए सर, designation of previously recognized financial investments and liabilities under previous AS, financial statements were classified as either loans and advances, investment, current and non-current, fine. But under IND AS, now the classification presentation is different. Financial liabilities had to be classified as amortized cost and fair value through profit and loss account. Now this will appear in the designation will be appearing in the disclosure, that means notes to accounts, and you can also mention if you desire on the face of the balance sheet. Voluntary exemption, are you यहाँ पे voluntary exemption है ही नहीं, because मैंने कहा कि financial liabilities जो amortized cost पे होती है, there is no exemption at all. Now MTD is permitted to designate at the date of transition to IND AS any financial at FDPL. This category for the liabilities cover only the derivatives. यहाँ पे सिर्फ derivatives आते हैं, यहाँ पे loan आएंगी, any borrowings, loans, government loan which is treated as a loan, everything will be covered here in amortized cost. जहां तक assets की बात है, amortized cost पे कोई भी रियायत नहीं है. Debt instrument to be measured at amortized cost, no exemption, no exemption, no relief. When it comes to the fair value through profit and loss account and fair value through other comprehensive income, I would advise you, to the extent possible, for the investment in equity shares, if they pertain to subsidiaries, associates, and JVs, do not go for this option. Do not go for this option because it's going to be very expensive affair. Provided if it is a listed company, you have to get the fair value report every quarter. Other than investment in subsidiaries, JVs, and associates, आपके पास कोई भी पर्याय नहीं है. But to designate them at FVTPL, and this is FVTOCI. Okay, friends, fine. Now let me see. This is still repeated. Okay. Now decommissioning cost and all this. This is one of the aspects related to the property plant equipment. When you're required to required by any law or by any by the legislation or any agreement, if it is a lease and then this agreement, if it is other than lease, then it's a statutory requirement that when you shut down. Now what is decommissioning cost? You must have heard in the property plant equipment and lease also that when you start it's commissioning, when you stop it is decommissioning. When you start it's recognized, when you stop it is derecognized. So at the time of derecognition, at the time of decommissioning, you need to incur certain cost mandatorily. It's not your option, not your choice. This is known as a decommissioning cost. So what an entity does, when the plant was set up, you estimate three things. Estimated liability to be incurred at the end of the tenure, estimated tenure, useful life, and estimated rate of discounting. 30 करोड़ की लागत है 30 साल के बाद. आपको स्पेंड 30 करोड़ की लागत है 30 साल के बाद, तो हमारे पास दो एलिमेंट आ गए, 30 करोड़ एंड 30 years, 30 years. And now third is the discounting rate. ये तीनों का समन्वय करके आप बताएंगे, you will come out to the present value. That to be done on the date of initial recognition. And after that, there's a decommissioning of liabilities, everything. But you have installed an equipment about 35 years back, 30 years back. So will you go back 30 years back and then you'll make some changes? Discount में कितना बदला हुआ, estimate liability में कितना बदला हुआ? That will be very cumbersome. तो ये standard कहते हैं कि rather than going to the roots, you can do one thing. Use this exemption. Measure the liability at the date of transition in accordance with IND AS 37. Estimate the amount that would have been included in the non-current assets in the period and calculate the accumulated. Rather than this, let's take an example. Your date of transition is 1st April 2020. Plant setup किया था 1 अप्रैल 2015. Now estimated liability, okay, computer जी lesson नहीं. On this date, not on this date. Ideally ये date होनी चाहिए, but हम exemption claim कर रहे हैं, इसलिए हम अपने आप को सीमित रखते हैं 1/4/20. I had presumed liability on 1/4/20 कि 2020 के कुछ साल के बाद, 15 साल के बाद मैं 1000 खर्च करूंगा. उसकी present value at 5%, this value is about 481 on this date. जबकि मैं उससे extrapolate करूंगा 2015 को, तो फिगर आएगा 377. If I take this figure in, had I applied this on 1st April 2015, तो मेरा फिगर ये होता. तो my entry would have been debit property plant equipment and credit the accumulated credit the decommissioning liability. ये मेरी एंट्री होती. अगर मैंने ये एंट्री होती तो मुझे 5 साल का डेप्रिसिएशन भी प्रोवाइड करना है. जी हाँ, तो my entry is retain earnings account debit to accumulated depreciation. अगर मैंने 1 अप्रैल 2015 को ये किया होता तो मेरी एंट्री होती ये. This and this, plus I would recognize the accumulated depreciation. Now see, from 1st April 2020, my present value of this decommissioning cost to be spent after 20 years from the date of installation is 481. That means this date और this date के दौरान जो इजाफा हुआ वो है 104. So I have recognized there's an increase in liability from 377 to 481 by 104. So I have to recognize this as a finance cost. Chunki it pertains to a period from April 15 to March April 20, I'm debiting to the retained earnings and not to profit loss account. So these entries for debiting the recognizing the finance cost and recognizing increase in the decommissioning cost liability. So this is what I have to do. Rather than delving deep into the matter, I take a shortcut and apply this on the date of transition. Okay, sir. And there are about the service concession arrangement, revenue from contract. This is very important because समय कम है इसलिए मैं इस पे ज़्यादा time व्यतीत करूँगा. Exemption from business combination. IND AS 103 need not be applied retrospectively for business combination taken place before the date of transition. And I would advise you also to take this, avail of this exemption. But if any business combination is restated to comply with IND AS 103, then all the subsequent oblique the later business combination shall be restated and entities shall apply them from the same date. And in other words, entities shall not be allowed to claim this exemption of the business combination. मिसाल के तौर पे हमारी date of transition is 1st April 2018. हमारी डेट है 1 अप्रैल 2018 और मान लीजिए हमने 2015, 16, 17, 18 4 साल में लगातार बिजनेस कॉम्बिनेशन की, तो मेरे पर्याय क्या है? एज अंडर. या तो मैं एंटायर 4 को 4 ऑब्लिगेशन 4 जो एक्विजिशन है उसको मैं भूल जाऊं, एंड आई से दैट आई डोंट वांट टू अप्लाई 103. सो डोंट डू एनीथिंग, just keep the same amount as is appearing in my books of account in the consolidated financial statements. But second पर्याय, मान लीजिए मैंने कहा 15 में I want to claim exemption, fine. 16 में I had acquired a business combination जिसके पूरे डेटा मेरे पास है, and it was, even if you ask me today to do as per the IND AS, मेरे पास सब calculation ready है. I got all the calculation, even if I had to apply 103 retrospective. So for 15 I claim exemption. For 16 I don't claim exemption. In other words, I apply 103 acquired in 2016 retrospective. तो अब मुझे क्या करना है? ये पर्याय मुझे exemption 17 और 18 के business combination में नहीं मिलेगा. I am deprived.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
थोड़ा सा सर हम वाइंड अप करना सर शुरू करें क्योंकि
या नहीं, इसी की तैयारी है. That's why I skip the 2 item.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so this is the only one which is very important. So the following, I have no option for the acquisitions made after 2016. So I cannot claim exemption for 17 and 18. Then again, we have to see which company has adopted the IND AS पहले, या तो parent या तो subsidiary. Goodwill shall not be tampered with except it's the impairment. Goodwill following adjustment shall not be made in the goodwill. मान लो आपने goodwill को amortize किए है as per the previous GAAP, you're not supposed to restate those impairment because impairment amortization of goodwill is not allowed under the IND AS. Only impairment is allowed. And then there's a equity instrument. These are very, then is all disclosure. So friends, I tried to cover as much as I can in a very limited period of 2 hours time, which is a very, very difficult. So more second session, ma'am, second session started 2:30. Oh my God, your second session also? Fine, sir. So I will share with this PPTs, the so-called intellectual properties. Mitro, बहुत अच्छा अनुभव रहा आपसे. Thank you very much. God bless you, and I wish you all the very best. सबसे ज़्यादा मुझे एक बात कहनी थी सर कि क्या लिटरेचर पढ़ना है सर. God bless you, all my friends, fellow professional brothers, chartered accountants.
Thank you, sir. It's like majority of the participants in the session are chartered accountants only.
Very
So that is what it is. The majority of them are there. So we have only around 20% as academicians and teachers here. So definitely you are addressing a good number of professionals only from your feet, sir. Sir, we will take this opportunity to thank you for sparing some valuable time of yours and be here to share your knowledge regarding the IND AS. And also, we are thankful. I am really thankful to you on behalf of the TLC Center, Ramanujan College team, as well as on behalf of Indian Accounting Association NCR chapter. And we do look forward to more such associations with you, sir. It was really very nice just attending your session. We were also just attending simultaneously, and really the way in which you have explained the concepts and taken care of the subject that was being given to you was really very mind-blowing. Thank you, sir, for being there for us.
मेरे मित्र ने पूछा how many slides we skip, hardly 2 or 3 slides. practical experience के हिसाब से which have risen we realized that to be given more importance to, केवल वही चीज का मैंने बहुत गहराई में आपको विश्लेषण किया. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting. And I have shared my mobile number on the chat. Participants are always welcome to come up with any query. And ये मेरा दायित्व रहेगा कि I'll solve the queries.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being there for us. Thank you, sir. With this, we come to the end of the session. Thank you. We come join again using this link only at 2 o'clock for the session by CA Amit Jain. Thank you.
अच्छा मैडम इसकी YouTube लिंक या रिकॉर्डिंग अगर जो है तो मुझे प्लीज शेयर करेंगे.
सर इसका YouTube लिंक सर चैट बॉक्स में ही अभी शेयर हुआ है. चारू कैन यू प्लीज शेयर इट वन मोर टाइम सो दैट सर कैन सर आप कॉपी पेस्ट करना चाहेंगे.
चारू जी मुझे WhatsApp पे कहिएगा, मैडम को कर देंगे because then I can share it with my other groups as well.
Sir, I'll do that.
चारू जी आपका सहयोग बहुत रहा है, आपने बहुत अहम भूमिका निभाई. सूत्रधार, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.